Talk. This is Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth.
Welcome back. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, proudly on AFR Talk. Bottom of the hour, Bruce Thornton breaks down the president's speech on race. I was going to go have at it, but I wanted to bring on the man who actually, after reading his article, it was just fascinating, absolutely fascinating how he broke this down and told the truth about what's really going on with the race dodge. That'll be a theme throughout the program tonight, and the dodge will be throughout the week. Theming shows. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. We turn our eyes to the economy, and specifically Washington, D.C. Now, last week I played for you an exchange between Eric Holder and D.C. Councilman Marion Barry. You see, what they did was they said that Wal-Mart could come into the D.C. market. They're going to open 3 Wal-Marts, about 6,000 jobs. And they could do that only if they paid $12.50 an hour. Problem is they excluded union shops from that requirement. And now Mika Brzezinski, she's on a program, Morning Joe, on MSNBC. I guess it's their most successful program. And Mika Brzezinski talking to an economist, Brian Schachman, about this. And what's interesting is, well, he's actually a panelist, pardon me. And he's commenting on this, Walmart, and what's going on. He's broken down the issue in a New York Times piece. Now, here's the deal. Mika Brzezinski's upset, and she doesn't like Walmart's business structure. Its paradigm, how it makes money. Roll it.
Brian Schachman, how are Walmart's profits? How are they doing?
They're doing very well. I mean,
really?
Listen,
Can they afford to pay people $12.50 an hour?
The answer is yes and no.
Okay.
The truth is their entire business model is based on low-wage workers.
Oh,
they have a relatively low-margin business, and so they have over $100 billion a quarter in revenue. But if they had to increase their wages like that in all their businesses, it would pretty much wipe out their profits. There's no doubt about it.
So their entire business model is based on paying people a wage that they cannot live on. $8.50 an hour, is it? $8.25? That's a joke. Come on. Who disagrees with that? Does anybody here at the table?
No, but communities want those jobs.
Yeah. Up next, new research shows why. Yes, Joe?
Not only do communities want those jobs, there are a lot of young workers that not only want those jobs, but need those jobs.
We'll take this up in just a moment.
We'll take this up. Well, let me take this up. 2/3 of people who are starting on minimum wage, 2/3 of them get an increase in their first year. When you arbitrarily raise it, you cause a 20% increase in unemployment. Now, these stats are readily available through a slew of articles and economic research. And even Christina Romer, remember her from economic advisor to President Obama, Council of Economic Advisors for President Obama. She spoke to this. Larry Summers actually talked about unemployment and extending unemployment benefits and it actually driving up unemployment. But I digress. This is the point. We talk about penalizing one group over another, picking winners and losers. A high degree of unemployment, to say the least, in Washington, D.C. that exceeds the national average. And Mika Brzezinski is saying Walmart's the problem because they don't pay enough. It's not a living wage. But union shops don't get the same treatment. It's a starting wage. And now those people, as it was pointed out, and it's a wonderful piece on newsbusters.com, details this, but they talk about how now there won't be any jobs. They'll just be unemployed. And this is classical liberalism, pointing at something and saying, it should be this. Well, $12.50, why not make it $20? And what are the consequences for Mika Brzezinski in the sense of a policy? Well, the consequences for the policy is no jobs, Walmart pulls out. And Marion Barry was presented the facts on this, but the facts didn't matter. And that's the unfortunate thing. Facts don't matter. It's all about emotion and a lot of, well, they should not should on people. They should too much. Stop shoulding. Grain Durham's Nothing But Truth. Now we bring you a related story in relation to Detroit. Bankruptcy, it looks like it's not going through just yet. Judges put the hold on it. But a disastrous situation. And we have liberal commentator, and I say that because she's a liberal who's making a comment, Sally Cohn, who is actually outstanding debater. And this exchange surprised me. And I would say, do you smell what the kraut is cooking? But it is done so well, I don't need the emotion. So I will just ask this. Do you smell what the kraut is cooking? It's a major smackdown. Here they are talking about Detroit's bankruptcy. What caused it? Sally Cohn versus Dr. Charles Krauthammer on Bret Baier's special report last night. Roll it.
You know, I think the cautionary tale out of this is that a number of folks are going to try and use Detroit falsely as an example to push more austerity, to really cram more austerity down the throats of the United States, where, look, every study that supposedly said austerity and cutting spending in order to create growth was a good idea has been disproven. It has hurt England's economy and elsewhere. I mean, England, literally, they can't even save the bathwater with the baby. And now they're going to try and use that to use Detroit as an excuse to do more of this. You know, look, Republicans, unfortunately, when the economy is good, they want to cut spending and cut taxes. And when the economy is bad, they want to cut spending and cut taxes. That's just their answer to everything. Here is where we need spending to help. That's just the reality.
So Detroit is not really an example of the failure of GOP economic policies. It's been run by the Democrats for 60 years. And you can cite all the studies you want about how bad austerity is. All you have to do is look at Detroit and you get an idea of how bad the absence of austerity is. It's a city in ruin.
Real quick, just on the austerity studies, and then we'll go to part two of the statement, because we're going to learn that Detroit's been anything but practicing austerity. But she says studies have proven, well, Goldman Sachs economists Ben Broadbent and Kevin Daly surveying the data of 44 large fiscal adjustments across the globe since 1975. So it's 1975 to 2010. And they report, according to Veronique Desrougier from the Mercatus Center, they report that cutting spending annually by 1% triggers a net 0.6% increase in economic growth. Now, what do you think stimulus spending does? You know, when they talked about the multiplier, like if we spend $1, it'll come back as $1.40. Not so. According to George Mason University's Mercatus Center as well, Robert Barrow and Charles Redlick, they showed that $1 of government spending produces much less than $1 of economic growth, between 40 cents and 70 cents. Now, why would this logically be true? Because I know I read numbers, and Veronique Desrougier, great economist, she's been on the show before. Why am I bringing up an article? When was this written? A little while back. Why would I bring that up? Here's why. If you take a swimming pool and you have a bucket, and you take the bucket down to the deep end and pick up water, and you take that bucket and you walk it down to the shallow end and pour it in, the government says, under the theory of the multiplier, you're going to get more water. The reality is you'll either get the same or less, because every dollar the government spends has to be taxed out of the economy or borrowed out of the economy. And that's just common sense. But I know what really caused Detroit's bankruptcy. And it was that specter of racism. Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, chiming in on how Detroit is a wonderful city. He's won awards from Detroit. And he loves Detroit, and Detroit deserves to be saved, and they can do it if they can just bail him out. Roll it.
This is a city worth saving, and we've got to do it. Of course, it's an 85% black city, so it's been perceived as a colony of black people who are ringed by suburban white areas that are now going into the city to plunder it. The perception is that there's a massive takeover of resources and materials and properties and basically being occupied. And so we have to acknowledge that part of this has to be the racial animus that has characterized that city for the last 50 some odd years. And look, the shift from manufacturing to service industries hemorrhaged jobs in the inner city, depleted that city of its economic infrastructure, and left it to its own fate. The governor should be investing that $100 million into the city, and your plan that he wants to use to destroy it, and your plan, of course, it's doable. You have to have the will.
We know how to write checks. Whatever happened to believing in American workers?
We know how to write checks. Let's take the racial component, because we've got to deal with I don't know what's sillier, but the city's mayor for 20 years, Rich Lowry wrote a great column on Detroit, by the way, in the bankruptcy. Coleman Young was an ethnically challenged, according to Lowry, black nationalist who hated the suburbs. Under Young, quote, journalist Zev Chaffetz writes, Detroit had, quote, all the trappings of a third world city, the showcase projects, and external enemy and the cult of personality. And that this was in the good old days of the 1970s and 80s. Great piece on that. So yeah, the racism was there. It just was black on white racism. The other point to it is they spent $100 million more than they've taken in each year. Kind of a problem. The problem wasn't spending. The problem was collective bargaining, unions, and, in essence, politicians being elected and making promises that they could not keep, as well as corruption. Nicole Gelinas wrote a great piece in the New York Post. We'll talk to her next hour. But first, Dr. Bruce Thornton will be with us. Race, Obama, AFR Talk.